chasing my dream against my parents' wishes. Hi, my name is Rachel, I'm 28, and I've been working as a fashion photographer for the past 6 years. Photography has always been my passion, so after high school, I made the unconventional decision to skip college and pursue internships with established photographers. My first internship wasn't with a famous photographer, hardly anyone in the industry knew him, but I was thrilled to have the opportunity nonetheless. Over time, I began assisting other photographers, observing their techniques, and learning everything I could on the job. Slowly but surely, I gained confidence in my skills. By the time I turned 22, I landed my first solo shoot, and I haven't looked back since. Now, I've been consistently earning 6 figures annually for several years, a significant milestone in my career. Unfortunately, my parents, Mark and Susan, have no clue about my accomplishments. To them, I'm still just a photographer, someone who's wasting her time and talent on something that isn't a real job. My job as a photographer keeps me behind the scenes, so I'm not as visible or celebrated as the models I work with. While people in the fashion industry know my name, I'm not famous enough to garner mainstream recognition yet. That anonymity, combined with my parents' narrow definition of success, means they don't see the value in my work. Every time I visit home, my parents go out of their way to remind me how much more successful my younger brother, Nathan, 26, is compared to me. Growing up, Nathan was the golden boy. He excelled in school, earning straight A's and the admiration of my parents. I, on the other hand, was more interested in creative pursuits like singing, theater, and sports. Academics were never my strong suit, and I was constantly compared to Nathan. Our parents never missed an opportunity to tell me how much better Nathan was, urging me to follow his example. It hurt, but over time I stopped fighting for their approval. I realized they would never truly appreciate me for who I was, so I started ignoring their remarks and focusing on my own goals. After graduating high school, I decided not to go to college, a choice that sparked a massive fallout with my parents. When I told them I wanted to pursue fashion photography, they were furious. We argued for months until they finally gave me an ultimatum. If I chose this path, they would disown me. They made it clear that they would never forgive me for what they saw as a reckless, foolish decision. Despite their threats, I stood firm. I knew photography was my passion, and I wasn't going to let their disapproval derail my dreams. When they finally cut ties with me, it was incredibly difficult. I was just 18, living in a new city with no financial support. I had to rely on part-time jobs and the kindness of others to get by. Thankfully, my Aunt Linda, my dad's older sister, stepped in to help. She would often send me money to cover my basic expenses, and I'll forever be grateful to her for that. Her daughter and I have always been close, so she has a soft spot for me, but even then it wasn't easy. I often felt lonely and isolated, knowing my parents and brother had essentially erased me from their lives. Linda never told my dad that she was helping me financially because she knew it would lead to arguments. She kept me updated on how my parents felt about my decision, though their reactions were usually negative. They didn't seem to care how I was doing or what I was accomplishing. They just dismissed my career as a waste of time. A few years after I left, my parents unexpectedly reached out to invite me home for the holidays. I was cautiously optimistic, hoping for a heartfelt reunion. Instead, I was met with indifference. Later, my mom casually admitted that they had only reached out because they didn't want to look like unsupportive parents in front of others, not because they had truly accepted my career choice. That revelation stung, but I decided to keep in touch with them anyway. I believed that if I kept sharing my achievements, they might eventually come around. Over the years, I've told them about the milestones I've reached in my career, but their enthusiasm has always been lukewarm compared to the praise they shower on Nathan. Nathan, who graduated with a business degree, landed a job with a family friend of our dad's. He earns a good salary and supports our parents financially, a fact they never fail to boast about. It's not like I haven't offered to help them financially too, but they've refused, saying they don't feel comfortable taking money from me because they don't trust my career. Their refusal to accept my help was particularly insulting because, in reality, they were struggling. After the pandemic hit, their cafe business took a massive financial hit. 2 years ago, they were forced to shut it down and retire early, which left them entirely dependent on Nathan's support. While I had initially offered to help, their rejection stung, and I decided to stop insisting. After that, my relationship with them grew even more strained. I stopped going home for the holidays because every visit would just turn into another opportunity for them to belittle me. I was done dealing with their negativity, so I decided to keep my distance. The only times we saw each other were at family events, where I would remain civil but detached. Very few people in my family know the full extent of how strained my relationship is with my parents. One of the exceptions is my cousin Linda, who recently got engaged. She hosted an engagement party a few days ago, and while I was invited, I couldn't attend because I was sick. After the party, my cousin called me to fill me in on what had happened, and it was eye-opening. During the celebration, my parents were bragging about Nathan's recent promotion, claiming that he was now earning nearly double his previous salary. Linda said their constant bragging was getting on her nerves. It wasn't just the self-centeredness of it all, but also the fact that they completely ignored the reality that I was doing just as well, if not better, in my career. Linda, knowing how much this dynamic had hurt me over the years, decided to put them in their place. In the middle of their conversation about Nathan, she casually mentioned how great it was that they had 2 children making 6 figures annually. My parents were visibly shocked. They had no idea I was earning that much money because in all these years they had never bothered to ask. Linda didn't elaborate further, but her statement left them reeling. The very next day, I received a phone call from my parents. I was surprised to see Mark and Susan's number pop up after years of minimal contact. When I answered, they immediately asked if it was true that I had been making 6 figures for the past few years. Thinking this was finally my moment to gain their approval, I told them the truth. I thought they were calling to congratulate me or tell me how proud they were of me. That was naive of me. Instead of praise, they expressed outrage. They couldn't believe that they had been pressuring Nathan to support them financially while I had been doing so well. They accused me of hiding my income and told me that I should have disclosed it earlier so they could make an informed choice about which child should be helping them financially. I was speechless. How could they twist this around and make it my fault? But then they took things to a whole new level. Mark and Susan demanded that I pay them $100,000 in reparations. They argued that I should share the responsibility of supporting them with Nathan, and that it wasn't fair for him to bear the burden alone. Their reasoning was absurd. They made it sound as though I had evaded responsibility all these years when in reality, they were the ones who rejected my offers to help. I was so stunned by their audacity that I couldn't even respond. Instead, I burst out laughing and hung up. After the call, I blocked their number. But Mark and Susan weren't done. They started texting me from a burner phone, accusing me of being selfish for not helping them and blaming me for putting all the pressure on Nathan. They claimed that if they had known about my income earlier, they would have accepted my help instead of relying solely on him. Even Nathan, who usually stays out of family drama, reached out to me. In his message, he said he didn't want to take sides but admitted that our parents had treated me unfairly in the past. However, he also suggested that I should have been more transparent about my income from the beginning. According to him, our parents couldn't have known how successful I was because they didn't understand my career. He also argued that, like it or not, I had a responsibility to help them because they were our parents and they had raised us. Nathan's recent message left me with a lot to think about. While I have no guilt or regret about my parents, Mark and Susan, I do feel conflicted about my brother. We've never had a close relationship, but it's also never been as toxic as my relationship with our parents. For that reason, part of me wonders if he might have a point. Am I wrong for not explicitly telling my parents how much I earn? Let me explain why I chose not to tell them before now. First, I've never been comfortable discussing my income, even with family. When I offered to help my parents financially, I wanted them to trust me, not because of how much I made but because I was their daughter. The thought of having to prove my worth with numbers felt humiliating. Second, I've never equated success with money. For me, success is about pursuing my passion and being happy with my life. I felt proud of myself when I first started my journey, even though I was barely earning anything. To me, that moment of taking control of my life was just as significant as my 6-figure income today. Lastly, I naively thought that my parents would eventually see the value in what I do, just as they valued Nathan's achievements. I wanted them to be proud of me for more than just my paycheck, but that moment never came. Looking back, I realized that was wishful thinking. When I explained this to Linda, she reassured me that I had done nothing wrong. She said I shouldn't have to disclose my income just to be treated with basic respect and love as a daughter. Her words were a relief because at least someone in my family truly understands what I've been through. Aunt Carla feels the same way. However, Nathan's neutrality throughout my life has been disappointing. Even now, when he finally decided to weigh in, he sided with our parents. That's been eating at me. But after reflecting on it, I've come to a realization. Nathan only stayed neutral because he's never been treated unfairly by our parents. He's never had to choose sides because they've always supported him. Before I blocked him, I sent Nathan a long message explaining my feelings. I told him I appreciated his effort to defend our parents, but he simply doesn't understand what it's like to grow up in the same house with the same parents but be treated like an outsider. He doesn't know what it's like to be constantly compared, belittled, and rejected for following your dreams. I explained that I don't owe our parents anything. Legally and morally, they were obligated to care for me until I turned 18, and after that they made it clear I was on my own. Everything I've achieved since then has been without their support. The people who were truly there for me during that time were Aunt Carla and Linda, not Mark and Susan. I also told Nathan that his financial sacrifices for our parents are not my fault. I offered to help them, but they snubbed me because they didn't respect my career. That was their choice, not mine. Now that they know how much I make, they want to rewrite history, but I'm not playing along. After sending that message, I blocked Nathan too. I realized that even though he hadn't been openly antagonistic toward me, his refusal to stand up for me over the years had been just as harmful. Shortly after blocking Nathan, I heard from Aunt Carla. She told me that my brother must have forwarded my message to Mark, because now he knows that she helped me financially after I left home. Unsurprisingly, he's furious. According to Mark, if Aunt Carla had refused to help me and insisted I return home, I would have eventually given up on my dreams and followed their rules. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do they really think forcing me to abandon my passion would have improved our relationship? If anything, I would have resented them even more for stifling my dreams. But it's clear that my parents aren't interested in understanding me. They just need someone to blame for the distance between us. And right now, that person is Aunt Carla. They've been bombarding her with messages, accusing her of leading me astray and rewarding my so-called bad behavior. They've even dragged Linda into the mess, claiming that her rude and classless behavior at the engagement party proves Aunt Carla is a bad influence. It's absurd. All Linda did was tell the truth about my income, but now they're treating her like a pariah too. I feel a mix of anger and sadness about how my parents have handled this situation. Instead of reflecting on their own actions, they're scapegoating the people who supported me when they wouldn't. It's infuriating, but at the same time, I feel a sense of relief knowing that Aunt Carla and Linda are on my side. Their unwavering support means more to me than my parents' approval ever could. I don't regret cutting off contact with my parents and Nathan, but part of me still wishes things could have been different. At the end of the day, though, I have to prioritize my own mental health and happiness, and that means walking away from toxic relationships, even if they're with family. Update 1. After my last update, things escalated. My parents, Mark and Susan, decided to take their grievances to social media. I still can't wrap my head around what they thought this would accomplish. They've been posting their one-sided version of events, painting themselves as the victims and dragging Aunt Carla and me through the mud. Their narrative? That Aunt Carla pushed me into an unstable photography career and encouraged me to disobey them, and that I've been lying about my finances to avoid helping them. According to their posts, they turned to Nathan for support, only because they thought I wasn't doing well financially. And now they're hurt that I withheld the truth from them. It's ridiculous. Most of it isn't even remotely true, but neither Aunt Carla nor I wanted to stoop to their level by engaging in a public fight. We tried reaching out to them privately, asking them to take the posts down, and I even threatened legal action, though I admit I was bluffing. Unsurprisingly, they didn't budge. The posts have caused a minor inconvenience. Old acquaintances, people I haven't spoken to in years, started reaching out to me, asking about the drama like it's some reality TV show. It's exhausting. I didn't want to air our dirty laundry, but with no other choice, Aunt Carla and I decided to share our side of the story. Update 2. 2 days ago, we posted everything. We didn't just share our perspective. We shared the truth. We explained how my parents have always favored Nathan, how they rejected my career, and how they later snubbed my offers to help them financially. We laid out the facts clearly and honestly, without stooping to their level. The response has been overwhelmingly supportive. A lot of family members and mutual acquaintances commented, expressing their disappointment in Mark and Susan and siding with us. It turns out many people had noticed their favoritism and unfair treatment of me over the years but never spoke up. Seeing their support now is bittersweet, but I'm grateful nonetheless. As for my parents, they haven't said anything directly to me since our post went live. However, Nathan emailed me, accusing me of fueling the fire. He claimed he had almost convinced Mark and Susan to take their posts down, but now they're refusing because of what I shared. He called me out for creating more drama, but honestly, what else could I have done? I told Nathan that I wasn't trying to cause drama. I was just defending myself and Aunt Carla from their false accusations. If my parents didn't want the truth out there, they shouldn't have started this in the first place. I've officially cut ties with him now. It's clear he's chosen his side, and I don't need his lukewarm neutrality in my life anymore. Update 3. It's been a few months since my last update, and I recently attended Linda's wedding. As her maid of honor, I spent a lot of time with her and Aunt Carla leading up to the big day, and it was a beautiful experience. We laughed, planned, and reminisced. Exactly the kind of warmth and love I've always wanted from my family but never received from Mark and Susan. Unsurprisingly, my parents and Nathan weren't invited. Linda told me they were offended and had even shown up at Aunt Carla's house to demand an explanation. Mark called her decision petty, which is laughable coming from someone who disowned his own daughter over her career choice. Aunt Carla, as always, handled it with grace. She didn't let Mark intimidate her and firmly told him that after everything they've done, they don't deserve to be part of Linda's life, or mine. The argument got heated, and now my parents are going around bad-mouthing us to anyone who will listen. But it's mostly just gossip-mongers who care, and I doubt anyone takes them seriously. The wedding went off without a hitch, and it was one of the happiest days I've had in years. Seeing Linda so radiant and happy, surrounded by people who genuinely love her, was heartwarming. Spending time with Aunt Carla and the rest of our extended family was the cherry on top. Back at work now, I feel more at peace. My parents haven't changed, and I doubt they ever will. Nathan has made his choice and I've made mine. Cutting them all out of my life has been freeing, and I don't regret it for a second. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, happy, thriving, and surrounded by people who truly value and support me.